So Cabal's War Games have started today, and I think over the weekend everyone's going to be giving this a go. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about some decks that have both been talked about in the clan or the guild that I'm in, which is Terminus Shores, but also I got suggested one by Blade and Striker, who they extensively tested it themselves on their stream. I'm going to put both Striker and Blade's YouTube channels and Twitch channels in the description below. Thoroughly recommend that you check out Blade's streaming on Twitch and you check out Blade's YouTube channel. He's probably one of the most active content creators in the game, one of the best players in the game as well, and he's a really good friend of mine, so I definitely recommend you go and check him out. He's going to give you way better sort of level of gameplay than I can provide for you, because he's just that good. So these are the units that you have available to you. We'll quickly go over them. You have 6 infantry, missiles, riflemen, MG squad, shockwaves, JJTs, snipers. Then you have 3 units in the war factory, dogs. You have rhino and pitbull. You have drones. You have talon, and you have mohawk, and then you have every commander available to you as well. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the maps first, and then we'll dive in to particular deck creation. But what I do want to tell you, if you are creating your own deck and you're not going to look past this point in the video, Pitbull is the only unit in this entire set that matters, because Pitbull beats all of the War Factory units, Pitbull beats all of the helipad units, and you might have to 2v1 with Mohawks, but Pitbull will beat all of these units, and the only units that matter against it on the infantry are the JJTs, which are expensive, and then the missiles, which, because of the Raider and how quick the Pitbull is, it's difficult to get missiles to effectively take out Pitbulls. So the only unit that actually matters, and I think has to be involved in every single deck, is the Pitbull. Then you build stuff around the Pitbull too. But I'm going to suggest a few decks that I think will work, and you guys go and test them out this weekend. Okay, so we're going to have a look at Fighting Pit, which is the first map of the 2 that are in the Cabal War Games. Fighting Pit is an interesting one. It's a very close quarters map. 2 points that really favour a double range unit like the MG squad or the snipers. They could come in useful here. Second set of Tiberium is awfully close to the top pad, which means if you ever have to move your harvester there, it's going to be exposed. And there is very limited obstacles to make use of with aircraft specifically. So realistically, the aircraft aren't going to get much work done on this map. So in general, you're going to find the MG squad might find some use here, but it's a pretty standard map, and most decks will function quite well on it. However, half and half is a little bit different. You can still make use of 2 range units, but there are a lot of obstacles for aircraft to make use of and counter them. For instance, Talons and drones can shut down MG squads placed on most of the areas on the control pads. Again, the second set of Tiberium is pretty close to the control area, so getting your harvester there may open it up to assault. However, it is worth noting that the first sets of Tiberium are very close to your base and actually quite hard to aggress upon because they are so far away from the control pads. So that means you're probably not going to face too much harvester aggression unless you're using something like JJTs. It is worth noting that JJTs could be very useful in Cabal War Games because of the fact that you're very unlikely to see huge amounts of harvester aggression, but again, we'll talk about that when we get to the deck making. 2 rules for this when you're coming to make a deck. Do not double harvester, and don't build like you're going to double harvester. There is no way that any of these decks warrant having a double harvester build. Rule 2, Pitbull is king, as we talked about at the start of the video. It beats pretty much everything in every deck, so you need to have Pitbull in your decks. Everything else is kind of built around it, and it's up to you. But let's go through some decks that I think could work. Okay, let's briefly look at the Blade and Striker deck, which is the one that they said they would be piloting through the Cabal War Games. You can also catch Blade's Twitch channel, where he is currently streaming it, or has been streaming it today, and he will probably be talking through his decision-making process. First of all, most people come to the consensus that Strong Arm is the strongest commander. She's the most versatile, and honestly has the best impact on a lot of these maps. So Strong Arm in general is going to be one of the strongest commanders to use. Most people saying that either Solomon or Jackson is the second best commander. I personally don't think Jackson's got too many targets. I think the Mohawk, snipers, JJTs, and Pitbulls are pretty good targets for Jackson, but otherwise you're expending a lot of Tiberium for essentially nothing, and he's been nerfed quite a lot too. My second choice would be Solomon. Now, the reason I would say Solomon is because, especially on something like Fighting Pit, there is lots of spread where you can get lots of tempo with the ion cannon. So keep in mind Solomon could be pretty good. So let's build that deck that Striker and Blade are using.
shockwaves itching.
Jump jet is amped.
Sniper team, send us in.
So, I have to just pause because they give you a little voice line now, which is pretty loud. The reason they've gone for these three here is that, in general, shockwaves are going to be every other form of infantry in this pack. They only really are countered by snipers, but you bring your own set of snipers to the table, and you can control infantry. So you've got pure infantry control with these two here. They will combined beat pretty much every other form of infantry in this pack here. JJTs, because as we said before, Pitbulls.
All right, let's do this.
Are the king. And realistically, the only thing that beats Pitbull is JJTs. Missiles are too slow, and Pitbull's radar needs to be kept up with the speed of the JJTs. You have War Dogs because they're a good opener and a good blocker unit, and they build directly into JJTs. So you can have War Dogs that can beat pretty much most of these, except for the JJTs and the Missile Troopers. They'll beat MG Squad, they'll beat Shockwaves, they'll beat Riflemen, and they'll beat Snipers. And then you can build into the Pitbull, which beats everything from War Factory and everything from the helipad. The other thing to consider then is something from your helipad, and it's going to be drones. Drones are versatile, super strong right now. They beat, again, most forms of infantry. They're great pad holders, and they're very quick compared to the rest of the field. You may ask, why have you not gone for Talons for anti-air? Pitbulls beat pretty much all of the air vehicles here, even Mohawk, you know, when you double up Pitbulls especially. So you have to be aware that realistically Talon, not really needed for anti-air because you've got Pitbull and it's just so strong. As well as the fact that you've got the turret from Strong Arm, which is pretty good against anti-air too. This is the deck that Striker and Blade think is the best on the field right now. It's a little bit of a weird deck. Most people wouldn't have built it like this, but I think it's quite cool, and I definitely would like to try this one out, and it's probably the deck that I'm also going to use because I fully trust Blade. Like I said, go check out his YouTube channel. He's really bloody good at the game. So that's the first deck that has been considered, and we'll go with that one. So instead of picking out all of the individual cards like I did last time, I'm just going to slot the deck in and talk about it. This is the next deck that I think could be pretty good to play with. This is an MG Squad Liang deck. Now, Liang probably is only going to be used if in combination with the MG Squad, but I genuinely think this deck could be pretty good. You open with MG Squad, you set it up as quickly as possible, and then you respond with either rifles to block, or you bring missiles to the table if they are going heavily into something like drones or Talon. You want to set the MG Squad up in those aggressive positions that get control over the pads. If you go back to where I talked about on Fighting Pit, set your MG Squad up there. That will control both pads that it's on, and then body block for it as much as you can. You can then follow up with anti-air and protection by going into the War Factory, or if you want to get some air dominance, you can bring out the Talon and try and body block air with the Talon. But Pitbull will do a really good job, and then you'll also have the body blocking potential of the War Dogs. It's all centered around the MG Squad. This could be a pretty fun deck to play, and I see that it doesn't really have too many weaknesses apart from drones and Talon. And if you can get drones and Talon onto the field quickly enough, and you're not going to get met by dogs super early too. The other way to deal with this is if you think you're going to get opened with drones or Talons, just go straight to Missile Squad, get a Missile Squad in position, then get your MG Squad out. You could either do it by having no Harvester, so by just going directly Barracks, Missile Squad, MG Squad, or you could go for the Harvester and play a bit slower to get your MG Squad into position. Doesn't really matter, but I think this is an MG Squad that could definitely work. Might not be the strongest deck on the field, but if you get the MG Squad planted and protected, it has got such dominance on these maps that I think it could do a really good job. Plus, MG Squad beats everything here. MG Squad will beat War Dogs, MG Squad will beat Pitbull eventually, MG Squad will beat every single form of infantry once it's set up, even snipers because they have to get into position. It will beat snipers because of the 2 range. The only things that it's going to be weak to is potentially rhinos, talons, and drones, and if you can protect it versus those, you're probably going to be in a good position. This is the deck that I saw, or something similar to Terminus Shores. They were talking about it in the Discord channel, and I wanted to bring this to you guys as well. Big shout out to Jade and everybody at Terminus Shores for discussing this deck quite openly. This is what I would consider a pretty solid deck all round as well. You've got the standard opener of the missiles in the Rifleman. That's going to give you a 1-2 opener that can deal with most things thrown at you. Then you have a War Factory buff of the Rhino and the Pitbull. Rhino is actually going to be pretty good here. Rhino will generally beat most of the infantry on the field, apart from JJTs potentially, and then you obviously need to have a Pitbull because Pitbull is just so good. And then you have a choice between drones and Talon. Now, the interesting thing is that people considered going for the the drones instead of the Talon instead of the Rhino, so you can go for drones and Talon to give you a bit of air dominance. But I actually think the Rhino slots in quite nicely here, and I quite like the fact that Rhino might actually see some use. So I would potentially consider this a pretty strong deck as well. So it's worth considering this, especially if these are the standard units that you're likely to have levels in. You can consider this one as a good deck to run in Cabal's War Games. It's the one that Terminus Shores, or similar to the one that Terminus Shores has been discussing, and I think a lot of people are likely to end up using too. So consider this deck when going into the Cabal War Games also. And very quickly at the end, I was thinking about a Solomon deck that could end up working here. In general, you want to have a fairly cheap spread of units for General Solomon, so this is what I've considered for the Solomon deck. You bring Solomon in because he's got great pad control and the fact that you can get great tempo plays. You have the War Dogs, the drones, and the rifle as a fairly cheap pad refiller to make sure you're contesting pads at the right time. Missiles and JJTs to deal with air and most of the vehicle units thrown your way. And then you also have the Pitbulls again. Pitbulls are pretty key to this particular war game, so you have to include it in most of your decks. Just wanted to throw this one out here as I thought it was a pretty good Solomon attempt deck where you could use Solomon to control the pads, especially on Fighting Pit. So you guys can consider using this deck too. But I think Blade's deck is probably going to be one of the best. I think the Liang deck could work if you get the MG squad set up. I think the Terminus Shores deck is probably going to find you a lot of good matchups. And then again, the Solomon deck here could be an interesting one to use if you want to gain pad control and just have those cheap refillable units to get onto the pads to make sure that you have those really big, impactful contests using the ion cannon. So those are all the decks. Good luck in War Games this weekend. I am going to be playing too. Hopefully you guys do well, and I will see you soon.